The chief observer of the European Union Elections Observation Mission to Nigeria, Maria Arena, on Saturday the 15th of June, held a world press conference where the body made public its final observations of the 2019 general elections conducted in Nigeria between February 23rd and March 9th, 2019, as well as the supplementary governorship elections of March 23rd. Now, having been in Nigeria on invitation by the Independent National Electoral Commission from the 5th of January 2019 to the end of the electoral processes, which culminated in the announcement and subsequent swearing-in of declared winners from the electoral processes, the International Observer Group, which had deployed long-term observers to all 36 states and Federal Capital Territory, made some pertinent observations about the activities of the key actors in the process, namely Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC), the political parties and the political class, security agencies, as well as the electorate, and further made recommendations on how the country can strive to enthrone a better electoral process come 2023 general elections. Now, what was the content of that report? How has Nigerians across board received the observations? Is the report coming at the right time? Given the fact that the results of the same elections has been accepted by the international community, the winners sworn into office with pomp and pageantry, while the judiciary is in the midst of sorting through petitions and allegations against the conduct and the results of the elections, which might cause some upsets at the end of the day. These are some of the issues we will be deliberating on this episode of Nigeria Today. Thanks for tuning in. I am Charles Ibe. Now, two striking observations made by the EU group includes the relatively low level of voter participation, which showed the need for fundamental electoral reforms, while indicting the leading parties for inability to prevent acts of violence and intimidation by their supporters, while apparently professing confidence that the nation's electoral umpire can do better. The EU mission had some recommendations for the conduct of future elections in the country.
The EU-EOM, therefore, recommend a strengthening of INEC procedures for the collation of results in order to improve integrity and confidence in the process. Second, and also in relation to the result process, we recommend that requirements are established for full results transparency, with data made easily accessible to the public. All results, including those from lower levels, could be displayed at collation centers. In addition, results from all collation centers could be scanned and published on INEC website by the time of the declaration of the final results. We recommend a strengthening of the organizational and operational capacity of INEC.
Now, as expected, reactions have continued to trail the observation of the EU monitoring mission as contained in the detailed report. The major opposition party, the People's Democratic Party (PDP), was vocal in lauding the report of the EU mission, claiming that it vindicates their position on the conduct and outcome of the 2019 general elections, particularly that of the presidential elections, which they are still contesting at the tribunals. On its part, the presidency has welcomed the report of the European Union on the 2019 general elections in Nigeria, promising to analyze it fully and act on the recommendations in the best interest of the country. However, the presidency, while regretting some of the negative components of the European Union observer missions, it is still of the opinion that none of the hitches noted affected the overall outcome of the elections. At this point, one is expected to read between the lines while summing up the outcome of the 2019 electoral processes, the issues and matters arising thereof, in line with the observations and recommendations by the EU Observer Mission. What do the average Nigerian think about this whole issue? Let's find out.
European Union, they didn't help the matter. They are the observers. They tell the world the truth. Instead of going to their village, to their community and be telling us that the election is not free and fair. Understand? They could have said that in the ear of cat and dog. Understand? That is, I raise my case.
To the statement of the EU, their observation is very, very right. There was nothing like election. It was totally malpractice. They overturned the elections. It's not the rightful winner of the election that won the elections. If the tribunal want to do their work right, the report will affect, will have an impact.
From the report they have showcased, I think that the INEC is their duty to review it and see if there is anywhere they can make an amendment based on these reports. There is nothing bad about that. They can go ahead and do that.
Well, you heard. Your thought is yours. The EU mission, with a firm belief that much of its recommendations which stemmed from their observations will require reforms that needs political leadership that is dedicated to the rights of Nigerian citizens and an inclusive process of national dialogue involving state institutions, parties, civil society and the media, with much of legislative changes and implementation in advance of the next elections, also presented a report to the newly elected leadership of the National Assembly. Let's get the reaction of the leadership of the 9th National Assembly on that occasion.
What can be more important than visit by election observers? We consider our electoral process very seriously, and we go through reforms trying to ensure that we get it right. And with every general elections, or even by elections or rerun, there will always be lessons for us to learn. And this is very important for us, because the ultimate desire and goal of all of us in this country, especially the leaders of this country, is to have an electoral process that will, at the end of the day, make the selection or election of leaders in all the positions in the country very credible and meet the international best practices and the integrity that is required. So we take this, your assignment, very seriously. We are happy you have been in this country all through since 1999, when Nigeria was returned to democracy. For us in the National Assembly, particularly the Senate, we have always worked hard on the electoral bill and even the Constitution to ensure that the electoral issues that crop up after every election is addressed so that we improve on the standards. I believe that your observations, even though I'm yet to know the details, but your observations will require the National Assembly legislative interventions somehow. I agree with you completely that we need to start in good time. We'll be looking at the lessons that we have to learn from the 2019 general elections. And even those elections that were done before 2019, because we were not able to address most of some of the issues that we should have addressed due to particularly the wrong timing we had when the electoral bill amendment was sought. But I am sure that this time around we'll try to start considering those issues that we feel require urgent legislative intervention.
In much of these presentations, reports and recommendations, some pertinent questions arises. Do Nigeria need an European Union mission to tell her what is wrong or right with our electoral process and how to make amends? What will be the significance of this report, coming at a time where critical decisions are in the making with elections petitions tribunals in top gear across board? Does it in any way substantiate the claims by the opposition, who has been crying foul about some outcome of the 2019 electoral processes? I had a conversation with a seasoned citizens' rights advocate and lawyer, Barrister Victor GIWA, on some of these concerns about the reports of the European Union Elections Observer Mission on the 2019 general elections in Nigeria.
the report did not say anything. I was an observer in the election, Nigerian election. And we had the opportunity to interact with some of their observers on the field, and it is not. They didn't say anything that was strange. So they talk about operational shortcomings, issue of violence, intimidation, voter apathy, intimidation by security men, specifying the role of security men, abuse of incumbency by the leading political parties in federal government, the APC in some states controlled by PDP, their state governors, operational errors of INEC, lack of commitment by INEC. The citizenry were not allowed to participate freely, intimidation and all of that. Security personnel interference in the process. Those things, they were just capturing what happened. So it was not new. But that it just shows that Nigerian people are watching, and that whatever comes as the result of any process, any of our endeavor, that we are exposing ourselves to the world. So it just shows that the whole electoral process is questionable. The procedures adopted, the action, the activities of INEC, and that INEC has not really impressed or improved or live up to the expectation. Yeah, that's the right word.
Now, sir, it's very, very key. You are an observer, and then you are an advocate for citizens. You made your observations. Now the EU is coming now to make their own observations. But then the result of the elections right now has been implemented, and they've moved on. We have swearing in and every other thing. Do you think this report coming at this time, was it timely, or shouldn't it have come immediately after that result, so that moving forward, let it be that it's the will of the people that this process delivered?
No, the timing of the report is exclusively the decision of the EU and their election observer monitoring group. So within there is exclusive right to determine when they want to bring it out. I don't work with them. We don't know what might have led them to have brought out their final report. They've brought out some interim reports.
Yes.
But so what they brought up now is the final report, about 89-page report. So that is very, very deep and well put together.
Now, so the key thing is the same observer group went to the leadership of the National Assembly to submit the same report, and this was a leadership that was recently inaugurated. Did they have to wait? Because obviously some of these flaws put to doubt some of these officers that we are recently elected right now. We have cases at the tribunal, and yet they are the ones leading the people. So why wait while the result has been adopted and the people are ready, and then you are meeting them to tell them that the process that brought them in wasn't really...
No, what it means is that the European Union, they are looking at the future elections.
Yeah, they
so
make recommendations.
Yes, so that there can be an improvement. But whether or not they brought their reports before now, really will not make any necessary impact, because our elections are not determined by our observers. Just as the word is, they are just observers. They cannot influence the result of the election. So if they had concluded that, oh, that election was marked with the irregularities and so it was a sham, it wouldn't have made any difference, because they are not tribunals.
Yeah, but sir, the democracy at its where it's supposed to be the will of the people, government of the people, by the people, for the people. The people is in the center of all of this. So if the people are not satisfied, because a lot of Nigerians are not satisfied, we are not satisfied by the whole process. But then we have an international community that called in to congratulate these elections, that said, yes, this is credible and accept it. Even when the opposition are protesting right now, they are still in court. So how does it place the international community, because this observer is from the international community, that seems to portray democratic standards? We are told it has to meet international standards. Now they said it's free and fair, and then the observers are telling us it was marred with irregularities. Where does it put the whole thing of international observers, Nigerian internal democracy, and then the will of the people at the middle?
No, but let me take it in cells. The first part is that the president was declared as even which is our president, who had been sworn, was congratulated by the various by some countries. There is sovereignty of a nation, in as much as the body with the power to declare results and the winners has declared the result. It is now the duty of Nigerians and not international communities to question, to interrogate that emergence. And that is what Atiku has done by going to the tribunal. So what international community are doing, they must also be able to balance their international responsibility to the sovereignty of the country. They must not be seen to be either influencing, suggesting, or showing any kind of support to any of the candidates. And if you could remember, the countries like UK and US were actually, warned, by the federal government that they should avoid any form of interference with the internal affairs of Nigeria. And so this international community, of course, will congratulate anybody who emerges, not as a matter of accentuating the fact that their emergence was credible, but for the fact that they have been declared winner. So they will leave the issue of whether or not they are credible to be determined by the election tribunal. So that is not their duty. However, but when a competent authority such as a court now declares, now confirms what Nigerians are saying or what Nigerians feel happened, then the international community will now wade in to say, look, the international community actually do not interfere in the internal affairs of country, except when the people themselves start protesting, when the people themselves start challenging, when the citizens start rising against the government. That is when they can answer, oh, as their own obligation to the United Nations and as as international community, they will come in to say yes, we must align ourselves with the people. So for now, Nigerians are waiting for the outcome of the election tribunal. The international community will also look at us and wait to see what comes out from the tribunal.
Now the opposition have applauded the result, the report released by the international observers. Does it in any way, or will it do you see it influencing what will happen at the tribunal?
No, well, it will. It might quietly. When I mean quietly, the report of the election tribunal, the report of the European Union cannot find itself into the election tribunal, because, like he said, like the word is, they are just observers. However, and they just have what we call they have what we call persuasive effect. They cannot influence the result. So, but it may have a persuasion on the mind of the members of the panel of the tribunal, because they are human beings. They read reports.
Yes.
You understand? They could one way or the other pick up some of the snippets to say, oh, it's possible that this election was mad and all of that. But then, if you can, but then it will not form part of what they will base their decision, except one way or the other they are going to bring it into the petition. But I don't think, well, as at the time the petition was filed, they did not put into consideration the EU report, so it wouldn't have really they would have anyway contemplated of bringing it into it.
All right, the whole essence is for democracy. The recommendations they make, like we did observe, is for future 2023 elections, for it to be gotten right. And in the mix, in the middle of all of this, are the people. Now, 2019 elections, we are not done with it yet, because the tribunals will still come up with the courts will still do their own part and all of that. Where does it leave the people? What options do the people have right now?
Yes, that is the most important question, and that is the most important issue Nigerians have to determine. Nigerians, like I said in one of the programs yesterday, one of the TV program, I said Nigerians have to determine the system. We have to take ownership of the system. We have to tell INEC the kind of election we want. Yes, and how do we do that? We have to start questioning. We have to start interrogating, and we need to start asking questions. What happened? Nigeria needs to be engaged in the conversation. Why are we getting what we got? What happened to results? What happened to this? Who did that? Why? We need to, the citizens have to be enlightened enough to interrogate certain issues. It is when we start it, and that is what is happening all over the world. Right as I'm talking to you in Hong Kong, the mass of Hong Kong are on the street because the government of Hong Kong came with a policy, to send back some foreigners, out of Hong Kong, and the people are saying no to extradite extraditing law, to extradite some citizens from persons from Hong Kong, and the people are saying no, we are not going to support this particular policy. And so that is the role of the citizen. So the citizens need to ask themselves, is it the election that we expected? Is it the kind of process we expected? 242 billion naira was expended for this election. We have more than 35 deaths recorded in this election. We have about 776 petitions across the 36 states of the federation. Is this the kind of system we want? The citizens need to interrogate that. And if that is not the kind of systems we want, we need to push for it. We need to engage the system. We need to interrogate the system. We need to dialogue. So it is when we do that that we can actually have an improved system. And that is when we can take ownership of the process.
Now, you did say something about Nigerians owning the process, Nigerians owning the democracy. Let it be the way Nigerians want it. That gives credence to from school of thought that both our constitution, our electoral process, every other thing that Nigeria has been operating since independence was handed down, was kind of alien to Nigerians. But now we have a National Assembly. We have an election, like we are talking about now, that brings in people that run the National Assembly. They are supposed to make laws that allows the people to own the process. But then, if elections like this get flawed and the wrong people get into those places, what hope do Nigeria have about ever evolving a truly Nigerian democracy?
It's a continuous process. We will continue to engage, we continue to talk, we continue to shout, we continue to go to the streets, we continue to engage the system and all of that. I mean, that is why we are actually, as citizens, and for some of us, we are putting so much confidence. We are relying on the courts, because now the politics is over. We are now in the courts. Yeah, we are now in the judiciary, and we are saying, we are praying, we are pleading that the judicial officials should look at these issues and establish if the process as conducted by INEC that led to the emergence of some of these political actors with processes or activities that was in compliance with the law. We are expecting this kind of discussion coming from the judicial cycle. So our confidence right now is in the judiciary, and we want them to take the bull by the horn to declare. I mean, if the facts available to them is that the President Muhammad Buhari actually won the election, so be it. But if the facts available to them also shows that President Buhari did not win the election, the judiciary should be confident enough and bold enough to say, no, you did not meet up with the standards that was set by the Constitution and the Electoral Act, and within the spirit of the citizenry, that you are not supposed to be declared as the winner of the election. The judiciary should so say.
All right, one of the recommendations of this EU is a pre-election tribunal that has to finish with these processes before any swearing in of both either presidential or any of the offices. Now, what do you think? Is it going to help the process if we have a tribunal, election tribunals that judge cases, pre-election cases, during election cases and all that, to ensure that whoever is getting sworn in does not have any form of distraction of having business to do with running around tribunals or courts?
Yes, that it will also help. It will also help the process. If there would not be any swearing of any candidate until these courts give a verdict on each of these contestation, it will help. It will help. But then also, it also put pressure on the judicial officers. Yes, and so they'll be prone to a lot of pressure. They'll be prone to corruption. They'll be prone to all sorts of undue influences. But it is doable. All we need to do is to get more judges. All we need to do is to get a more transparent process. All we need to do is to get more liberal process. I mean, election should be conducted in the open. You know what I mean? Election tribunals should be conducted in the open. There should be media should be allowed to record. This issue of, oh, don't discuss with the media and all of that should not be. People should hear what the judges are saying. People should be able to shame the judge that makes some funny pronouncement that is not according to law. So everything should be open. So that if a judge, let us even see a live transmission of election tribunals proceedings, so that an ordinary man on the street can say of a truth that yes, justice is done. That is why Lord Dennis said justice must not be done, must not only be done, but it must be seen to be done.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you for
Well, the people once more are reminded that they remain the key to getting it right when it comes to electioneering and the sustenance of democratic tenets in Nigeria. If we can conceive it, we can achieve it. That's the size of this episode of Nigeria Today. Thanks for watching. I am Charles Ibe.
We hope very much that this report serves the interests of Nigerian people. In particular, we have 30 recommendations for electoral reform. This is the most important part of the document for us. Of those 30, we've identified 7 priority recommendations, but really our ultimate conclusion is that a process of comprehensive reform is needed in order to really strengthen the electoral process so that some of the problems that we clearly saw during this election process are not repeated in future years.